I come to you on this Tuesday night here in mid-October begging you to let me repredict the college football playoff. And I hear no voice of dissent. Raise your hand if you're against this. All right, no one objected in the studio. So here we go. First thing you need to know is at the beginning of the season, reluctantly, I predicted the playoff. I say reluctantly because I don't think there's a whole lot of skill in this. This is what it looked like. Yes, that's the Florida Gator logo up there with the 8 seed. I don't think it's going to work out for Napier and the boys. Yes, that's Penn State with a first-round bye. I'm not even feeling that bad about that. I think most people, at least that I saw, had Penn State in the playoff. And as we all know, if you do something bad, but a lot of other people do it too, it's not your fault. It's written somewhere. So let's see. Clemson with a 5 seed down there, not feeling great about that. We're probably going to have to rethink that. You'll notice Nebraska has the 11 seed. More on that in a second. Arizona State, not too good. Texas, not too good, not quite dead. So yeah, there's some stuff in here that frankly I wish I had back. But we can't go back in time. But what we can do tonight is we can just say, let's just repredict it. So I'm going to repredict the playoff. And I'm going to do it conference by conference, and then I'll show you what my 1 through 12 would be. And I know a lot of you listen on podcasts, so it's not going to be strictly visual. And you got to remind me of that, Jesse. I will lay it all out for you. So here we go. In the SEC, it's a jumbled mess. Well, it's not a mess because it's entertaining. It's just hard to figure out. The SEC is what the Big 12 used to be. Ironically, the Big 12 has become what the SEC used to be. One of them's really easy to figure out, and the other one, we've got 10 teams with 0 or 1 conference losses. Yes, that's the state of the SEC. Now, of course, mathematically, that can't continue. Ole Miss plays Georgia Saturday. LSU plays Vandy Saturday. Tennessee plays Alabama Saturday. So a lot of these teams are about to collide, and we'll see where it goes. I feel pretty good about 2 of these, but you'll notice if you look at the league standings, Ole Miss is right up there. For example, they've got no conference losses so far. Them, A&M, and Alabama, only undefeated SEC teams in league play. The odds right now, I think, make sense. So the odds at FanDuel to win the SEC are Alabama and then A&M. There's a little gap between Bama and A&M. Georgia's right there, and then it's a little bit of a gap, and then Ole Miss, Texas is still there. Then there's a huge drop-off. So you've really got a lead pack of 5 teams, and I think it's interesting that LSU's not part of that lead pack. Missouri's not part of that league pack. So from a FanDuel perspective, from a market perspective, they're saying Bama, absolutely the favorite. A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, even Texas, we could see it. I will choose those top 2 teams there. Bama was my preseason SEC championship pick. They haven't even lost a conference game, and they've gotten a lot of the losable games out of the way. Still got a few to go, but I'll ride with them. But I am going to switch up the team that I think they'll play. I will put Texas A&M in Atlanta. That'll be the first time they've been there since they've been in the league. That would be just a huge, huge feather in the cap of Mike Elko, even making it there in year 2 of his tenure there. So give me Bama over A&M in the SEC championship game, and then we'll pause, and we'll see what that means for seeding. Next up, Big Ten. It's not totally clear, but it's coming into form really, really quickly here. Ohio State and Indiana have been the class of this conference so far. To me, I'm more worried about how does the rest of the conference backfill. By that, I mean, if it is Ohio State and Indiana, 1, 2 in any order, then what is Oregon? What is USC? What is Nebraska, Washington, Michigan? Like, how much of a say are these other teams downstream in the Big Ten standings going to have in the playoff bracket? So, like Nebraska, for example, I had them in my preseason playoff bracket, I think at the 11 seed. And right now, they're sitting here still having to play at Minnesota. They got Northwestern, USC, at UCLA, at Penn State, and Iowa. A lot of losable games, like Nebraska's far from invincible, but the one that you kept looking at after they lost to Michigan a couple of weeks ago was, they've still got to go to Penn State towards the end of the year. Well, that does not carry the same weight as a sentence that it used to. So there is no one hurdle there that you look at and say, there's the definitive second loss. In totality, do I think Nebraska's a good enough team where I can start penciling W's in there? No, I do not. However, I predicted them in the preseason, and I can't come off of this. So if there's some team that's going to weave their way through there as an at-large team, I'm still holding out hope for Nebraska. As for the Big Ten championship picture, Ohio State and Indiana. And I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of folks out there in very expensive suits are pulling for USC to upset that, because USC could go on a run here. You got to wonder how meaningful to the Big Ten championship picture will that USC at Oregon game be a little bit later in the year. For that matter, Oregon the week after, I think, plays Washington. This weekend, Washington goes to Michigan. That outcome will start to determine how much weight that Washington-Oregon game could carry. That's a long way down the road. Give me Ohio State against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. Until further notice, I will ride with Ohio State. They are favored to win the conference, and then it's Indiana, and then there is a huge drop-off, like a roller coaster drop-off to Oregon, and then another huge drop-off to Michigan. So the Big Ten picture, as of right now, it's really in focus, and some stuff has to go wrong. And by that I mean Indiana has to somehow lose a football game, or Ohio State, for things to change. In the Big 12, here we go with Texas Tech. Just a runaway freight train. But Josh, I'm looking at the league standings on the screen. They're one of 3 undefeated teams in conference play. Yes, they are. And I'm not taking anything away from Brigham Young. I'm just saying, you see Texas Tech and Cincinnati and Utah all there in the top 5. BYU still has to play all of them. They just hadn't played them yet. So from a JP poll power rating perspective, we don't think as highly of Brigham Young as some of these other teams. So I don't view them as a conference championship contender at the moment, but upsets happen every Saturday. They're really good at it. They play Utah Saturday, actually. So like this stuff could change in the next 24, 48, 72, 96 hours. You got to run the numbers here on the desk. Cincinnati versus Utah could be a play-in game for the conference title game when they do face off. I think Iowa State already with 2 conference losses, it's tough to see. Plus, they're really badly beat up. TCU and Kansas State also have 2 conference losses. So for the Big 12 championship game, Texas Tech, I think, is going to be there. They are the current fairly overwhelming favorite to win the whole thing in the Big 12. I think they're going to be there. I think they're going to have a rematch against Utah. And it's very interesting that everyone's going to remember, well, that game already happened, and it happened in Salt Lake City, and Texas Tech rolled half the game with their backup quarterback, and they still rolled. They did. There is no catch there. They did. I think you'd be somewhat surprised at how low that point spread would be. Just keep that in mind. Still a ways to go, but if that game does happen, you had a blowout in Salt Lake City. I think you may be surprised, relatively speaking, how low that point spread would be, because Texas Tech plays at Arizona State this weekend. They're a double-digit favorite. So, like, you're having to lay a heavy number if you're betting Texas Tech right now. In the ACC, this is the conference where the weirdness could happen. It used to be the Big 12. The Big 12 makes a lot of sense right now on paper. The ACC, this is where the weirdness could happen. Miami's looked like the best team here so far. I will grant you that. But Duke, SMU, Virginia, Georgia Tech, they're all undefeated in conference play right now. And they don't all play each other, and they don't all play a murderer's row of a schedule. So you need to also keep in mind, in fact, Jesse, do we have Miami's schedule? You need to keep in mind how Miami's season ends. It's very, very clear right now. Miami's going to be favored over everyone they play. They may be favored most weeks by double digits, but they have taken their last bye. They play Louisville this Friday night, I believe. And from that point on, it's all conference games, and they do not take another bye week. So count them right here with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row to end the regular season. The last 2 weeks are on the road in cold weather cities, at Virginia Tech and at Pittsburgh. If they are to make it to the ACC championship game, that would be a 3rd consecutive week on the road. We've been talking about this since spring. It is very, very unenviable a spot to be placed in by the schedule makers. Now, if you're an Oklahoma fan and you know the schedule you have to play, you're looking at that saying, I would trade for that in a heartbeat. I know you would. Of course you would. I'm not sitting here saying that this is the toughest schedule you've ever seen. It's a really weird dynamics-based schedule. That's all I'm saying. So if they go to Charlotte, which I think they will, I've got Miami playing for the ACC championship game. They're the current minus 180 favorite to win the ACC. I think they'll be there. I've got them playing the team that has the second best odds to win the league right now, Georgia Tech. I have not budged off that. I had Georgia Tech playing for the ACC championship game before it was cool to have Georgia Tech playing in Charlotte. You give me Miami to beat Georgia Tech in Charlotte. However, just keep in mind, as we start to get towards what could potentially tear the bracket apart, hey, wait just a second. I appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. Georgia Tech's going to be playing a team that may be beat up. Now, you don't know about the injury situation with Miami. Miami's a very star-studded team. There are portions of that Miami roster, just like with a lot of these high-level teams, where you remove the number one from this position group or that position group, and there is a fairly sizable drop-off to the number two. Now, if they stay healthy, that's a moot point. This is college football. It's not a fairy tale world. No one stays totally healthy. You just never know what situation they may be in. All right, let's take a look at what I think the seeding will be. So I just gave you my conference championship updated winners. Here is where I would have the seeding right now. I got Ohio State winning the Big Ten, so they'd be my number one overall. I got Miami winning the ACC. They're my number two. Texas Tech rolls to win the Big 12. That's my number three. And I got Bama as the SEC champ. I'm not so sure Bama may not lose another game, though. Just a little bit tougher schedule than some of these other teams here. That's why I've got Bama number four. If Bama doesn't lose another game and they win the SEC, they'd be the 2 seed. But give me Bama as the 4 seed. All right. Big Ten championship game loser, Indiana. As of now, I've got to assume that's their first loss of the season. So they're going to be right there in the 5 seed. A&M, if that's their first or even second loss of the season, if a 0 or 1 loss A&M is in Atlanta, they're not dropping past 6. So I think pretty solidly your Big Ten and SEC title game losers are right there at 5 and 6. That's Indiana and A&M. I got Oregon at the 7 seed as an at-large. I got Ole Miss as an at-large at number 8. I'm rolling the dice a little bit there. Ole Miss could pop on the national radar big time this weekend. They could be exposed as a fraud this weekend. Like there's high variance in that Georgia game. Ironically, I've got Georgia as the 9 seed. So give me Ole Miss, Georgia, 8-9. I've got Notre Dame in the playoff as of now. There's a lot of debate to be had there, and I will have that debate in just a second. I'm sticking with Nebraska at number 11. I had it in the preseason. I'm not coming off Nebraska. You got to kill some of my predictions before I'm willing to let them go. And I've got USF currently as the G5 team. Whoever the G5 team is, they'll be in that 12 spot. So the first thing that is going to immediately come to the forefront here before I show you the entire bracket is how will Notre Dame get paired or compared with some of these other teams. Notre Dame right now, so they're a 2-loss team. They have Southern Cal this weekend. If they lose this weekend, they will not be a playoff team. There are some people out there who claim even if Notre Dame were to win out right now, they still may not make the playoff. Now, my whole philosophy on that is consider what we're saying there. Notre Dame right now is 4-2. Their losses are to Miami by 3 and to A&M by 1. So theoretically here, that would be 2 losses by a combined 4 points to 2 playoff teams. One of them being a conference champ, the other participated in their conference championship game. So those are about as high quality losses as you could have. And the committee, I think, will be looking at that and then also looking at the fact that they just rattled off 10 straight wins. And they'll be saying things like they're the hottest team in the country. And I think there'll also be a talking point. Now, this is just priming you for this. I think if Notre Dame rattles off 10 straight and they finish 10-2, there will be a very popular sort of focus grouped talking point that starts to circulate about how if Notre Dame would have played Miami and A&M in the middle of the season after they got hot, maybe one of those games goes their way. And you can't disprove that. I just think it'll be ammunition in the chamber of someone who's already looking to make the Notre Dame argument. I'm just wondering how they get compared to like a 3-loss SEC team or even some 2-loss teams. Just that's going to be a big debate. It's impossible to know who A and B is right now. Notre Dame would be A. It's impossible to know who the B is right now. So you got that. Big 12 and ACC championship game could completely tear this bracket apart. Because right now, like in my projection, I've got Miami beating Georgia Tech. But it doesn't have to go that way. Georgia Tech could sit there and beat Miami, and at that point, Georgia Tech's going to be in the playoff. Miami's still going to be in the playoff. It's the same thing that happened in the ACC last year when you had Clemson end up winning the thing. So you had 2 ACC teams in, and that knocked somebody out of a spot. Well, that could happen here. It could also happen in the Big 12. What if Utah's the 16 seed, but they go in the playoff or in the conference title game and beat Texas Tech? Texas Tech's still going to be in the thing. It's just that Utah is going to be in there as well. And heaven help everybody if both of those things were to happen. That's how you knock some of those at-larges out of the field. I know that sounds fun, but from a media standpoint, like from a media rights network standpoint, that's doomsday for those people. Doomsday. I don't have a media rights deal. I'm not broadcasting any of the playoff games on our YouTube channel. I'm good. I'm fine with whatever, come what may. But the punishment for the conference championship game losers is the other thing to keep an eye on. So here's a scenario, as I'm about to give you my bracket. But here's a scenario I just want you to think about. We're still a ways away. It could be a moot point. Let's just say Notre Dame's sitting there at the 10 seed going into conference championship Saturday. Notre Dame's done. Their season's done. So they're not playing in the conference title game. Let's say Georgia Tech's number 9. Kind of similar to what SMU was dealing with last year. Let's say Georgia Tech's sitting there number 9. Georgia Tech loses to Miami. Is Georgia Tech falling behind Notre Dame? Let's say they fall out entirely. Is the committee willing to punish someone for the audacity of earning their way into their conference title game and playing in it, which Notre Dame doesn't do? It's just, it didn't happen last year. SMU didn't get dropped out last year. That's 1 year. So the committee's sitting there telling you that we're going to emphasize strength of schedule. Remember, we got that new criteria, allegedly, that we're going to be going by. So it's going to really emphasize strength of schedule, and we've got this value monetarily that's baked into these conference title games. We cannot afford to render them irrelevant. Therefore, we can't be punishing people when they make their conference title game. You can't do that. That's an optics nightmare. Ethically, it's a nightmare. Value-wise, it's a nightmare. So just keep that in mind. All right, here is my updated bracket. I am so scared. So here's what it would look like. The numbers actually kind of should be inverted because I believe in home team on bottom. So we would have Georgia go to Oxford in round 1, Georgia versus Ole Miss. We'd have South Florida going to Indiana in round 1. We would have Nebraska on the road at Texas A&M and Notre Dame in Eugene against Oregon. Here is how I have those games shaking out. Give me Georgia over Ole Miss. Give me Indiana over South Florida. Give me Texas A&M beating Nebraska. It was a fun ride. It was a very fun ride. And give me Oregon over Notre Dame, although there is nothing that shocks me. If Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame get in the playoffs, I really value having been there last year. And there is that aura that had existed about Autzen Stadium, but it's dinged a little bit right now because of what Indiana just went in there and did. So I don't necessarily think Notre Dame would be rattled going on the road to Autzen. Save that. Use it as a soundbite if you need to 3 months from now. Mario Cristobal versus Dan Lanning in the second round of the playoffs, buddy. That is popcorn. That is cinema. If you just think it through for a second, just an unbelievable matchup there. I'm going to take, in the following order, Ohio State over Georgia. I'm going to take Alabama over Indiana. That's DeBoer facing a team he used to coach in Indiana. I'm taking Oregon over Miami. And I am taking Texas A&M over Texas Tech. Don't overlook that matchup there in the second round. Texas Tech versus Texas A&M. How about the fact that we got 2 Texas teams in the bracket here? Neither of them have that Longhorn logo. There's a little bit of an upset if you predicted that in July. All right, our semifinals are set. It's 2 national championships, basically. So Ohio State versus Bama, Oregon versus Texas A&M. This got easy for me because my national championship matchup preseason is still in play. So I'll take Alabama versus Oregon in the national championship game. My national champion is still very much in play, so give me Alabama to win the national championship. So if I can just get the bracket to fall that way, if Dan Lanning can get Oregon's act together and Alabama can continue to walk this tightrope, both of them stay relatively healthy, and once I get in the playoff, going to be a tall order to beat Ohio State. It's going to be a tall order to beat A&M because if both of those teams have gotten that far, they're clicking. And those are really good talent rosters. But I'm not coming off my preseason predictions unless I absolutely have to. Again, ethics. We teach it at Pate State. So I started with Alabama and Oregon. I'm sticking with Alabama and Oregon. And if it doesn't come true, it's because kids, coaches, or officials screwed up. It's not because of me. It's not my fault.